Crystal Palace, the saviours of English football, and will their glorious FA Cup win yesterday signal a new era of wonderful competition in English football where anyone can dine at the top table and be like Palace and go ahead and win a major trophy? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. We'll get to the big picture, but first of all, congratulations, Crystal Palace. Just absolutely brilliant. It's one of those moments where the stoppage time was ticking out yesterday and they're cutting to lots of people my age in the crowd looking very, very emotional, who presumed that their football support in life was never going to result in them standing there at Wembley watching the team they support win a major trophy. And for the majority of football fans, that is the case. You're never, ever going to see that. And Palace did see that yesterday with the win against Manchester City. Look, elephant in the room. If you play that game 10 times the way it went yesterday, Man City are going to win 9 of them. Look at the stats. Look at the way it played out. Look at the big decisions and what happened. It was just one of those lightning in a bottle where Palace got their goal. Amazing. Eze out of the EFL, doing it for Palace, doing it for England, doing it in the Premier League. He nabs the goal with, I think Glasner said it himself in the post-match, the first kind of time they'd even been in the half, really, of Man City, and they grabbed the goal. Then, of course, there's a penalty save in there. You know, you need the moments to go your way. And it would be remiss of me not to say that Dean Henderson probably should have been sent off, shouldn't he, for a dog-so there with Haaland knocking the ball around him. By the way, I think we're now reaching a good point in the debate about red cards for denial of obvious goal-scoring opportunities. And we had it in the playoffs I was covering in the Championship, and a lot of people piping up, oh, it's ruined the game. I think the what shall I call him? Let's not say anything about Gary Lineker, but Gary Lineker said, oh, it would have ruined the game. So it's out there as a thing that the laws being correctly applied would ruin the game. But it does feel like we're closing in on dog-so now. And I think even the word back from the VAR was, not an obvious goal-scoring opportunity, a possible goal-scoring opportunity. So it feels like somewhere down the pipe we are going to get to, well, okay, somebody running anywhere near the goal and taking a shot is going to be an automatic red card for whoever fouls them. I think maybe in the next 5-10 years that'll get kind of tweaked in the laws. But that's a conversation for another day. They got away with one, Palace. They defended manfully and they went ahead and got the win, their first ever major trophy. So I think it's absolutely brilliant. Maybe it's the Englishman in me that loves to see the underdog, but we all do. It's a great story, isn't it? It's the whole David and Goliath thing. So that's the first portion of this video. Just well done, Palace. I thought it was brilliant. Yeah, everything completely went for them on the day, but so what? It now says Crystal Palace FA Cup winners 2025. Let's go to the bigger picture, though. Does this make Crystal Palace the saviours of English football? Have they saved this season from boredom? By the way, when it got to the quarterfinals, me and Mikey were doing the predictions and we had our fingers crossed because we kind of knew that Liverpool were going to win the title. We kind of knew that the 3 teams promoted to the Premier League were all going to get relegated. And we were kind of looking at the Championship and seeing 3 teams with parachute payments in positions 1, 2 and 3. So it was looking, I'll talk about Newcastle in a minute, by the way, who won the Carabao Cup, obviously. It was looking like a very boring season of English football. And you looked at it and you had Fulham Palace, Preston Villa, Brighton Forest and Bournemouth Man City. And I sat there and I said, right, there's one team in there that's won the FA Cup loads. Everybody else, every single one of them would either be winning for the first time or for the first time in forever, to quote the great Disney movie, Frozen there. But then, Manchester City kind of gradually picked their way to the final, didn't they? And it was, well, you say it's a 2-1 shot. It's not a 2-1 shot, a single game against Man City. It's a whatever. I don't know what the odds for Palace to win yesterday, but it's not a fair fight. And that's where we've got to get in the conversation. So, Pep Guardiola said earlier in the season, and I agree with him, that the Premier League mid-table sides are more powerful than they have ever been. And he is correct. We've just mentioned Newcastle, who've won their first major trophy in 70 years, was it? Winning the Carabao Cup earlier in the season. We live in a world where West Ham can be sort of towards the bottom of the Premier League and be winning, say what you like about the Conference League, but a European trophy. And where a Bournemouth defender is about to sign for Real Madrid. So Pep is right that, to use a horrible political term, there is some trickle-down economics that has meant that this constant 100 million quid a year of TV revenue and everything else on top of that that's going into the pockets of these regular Premier League clubs has now meant that maybe the mid-table clubs, I'm not saying they're closer to the elite, but they're certainly more powerful than they've ever been. And if your definition of a good Premier League is that Crystal Palace, Bournemouth, Fulham, Forest, whoever, sorry if I've missed your team out, are now as powerful or stronger, certainly financially stronger, than the top teams in every other country, really, other than Spain, where you've got Real Madrid and Barcelona. But if that's your definition of the Premier League being strong, then the Premier League is very strong. But always look one step further on than that. Are any of those teams going to win the Premier League? No, they're not, are they? Let's be quite fair about this, because then the entire problem with English football is chasms, and the chasm between the mid-table and then the elite, with, say, Champions League money and just commercial money to die for, means that, yes, Leicester City, amazing. You get that. You get that once in, not even once in a lifetime. You get that once in 2 lifetimes, just the shock winning. You might get that in a tournament, but not in a league. I mean, my God, okay, I saw Greece win the Euros in 2004, and I saw Leicester win the Premier League. What was it, 2016? Sorry, I forgot the year wrong. Otherwise, nobody wins the Premier League outside of the elite, do they? Or even the first. Well, let's talk about it as the Premier League, because really, if you say Blackburn and Chelsea and Man City were the result of owners coming in with more money than everybody else, and they were just a result of massive spending. And it's no offence to all of those clubs, great teams at Blackburn, Chelsea and Man City, but it's a bit different than Man United, Arsenal and Liverpool, who'd, you know, for decades and decades been the biggest clubs in the country and kind of won everything. Other than that, it's Leicester. And then you have to go pre-Premier League, where you do get a Leeds who, you know, maybe in the 70s have an amazing manager, an amazing run. Aston Villa. God, Ipswich got close. Watford finished second. Derby won it, didn't they? Forest won it twice. You have an amazing manager and away you go. But that's all kind of gone. And if the mid-table teams being better than, I don't know, all the best teams in Italy and all the best teams in Holland and Portugal is more important than the same teams just winning the Premier League over and over and again. And we think that PSR, especially looking at Newcastle trying to compete and having to sell players, basically, is going to ring-fence that. Then does Palace winning the FA Cup make the slightest bit of difference? Possibly not. And if you look at the FA Cup, is the Palace win even a thing? You know, in terms of this century, okay, Palace 2025, I've got Leicester 2021, I've got Wigan 2013, and I've got Pompey 2008. So pretty much, so what's the century? Is 25 years. We're into it, and we've had 4 kind of surprise winners. So I don't know. Maybe in terms of FA Cup terms, the Palace win is just, you know, it just happens every, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years or whatever, that you get a shock winner, and Palace is it. And as I always say, and it's important we do this in life, not just football, because we all look after ourselves and make sure that we're okay, and that's the human survival instinct. before we look at those less fortunate than ourselves. And I happen to support a team that is slightly less fortunate than Crystal Palace in Ipswich, who are not one of the 17. And of course, the term we're using now for the Premier League is the 17, because I think we're going into the 4th season now where it's going to be the same 17 teams. And look, Fulham, Bournemouth and Forest fans get very upset when I say that. And I say don't. I say well done. You got in there and you stay in there. And look, Fulham and Bournemouth were parachute teams anyway, weren't they? And Forest will admit they had to spend big and got a couple of deductions, and maybe they're the new model. Just go for it and try and stay there like Forest have done. But we now have 17 teams that are just miles better than their promoted teams. And by the way, you can make arguments for teams having utterly dreadful runs this season. Palace were one of them at the start of the season. Everton have been appalling at times this season. Wolves, Manchester United and Tottenham are potentially going to go into the Champions League. Have had awful seasons. West Ham fans tell me they've been dreadful this season, and none of them are anywhere close to getting relegated. Miles away from it, because just year after year after year after year, where your subs bench could probably all get into the promoted teams' first 11, couldn't they? And look, it's not a new thing that the promoted teams are not as good as the established teams. Fine. But it is a new thing that the mid-table teams, that your Palace, who we're talking about here, Bournemouth, Fulham, etc., are so much better. So much better. And then, again, always look one step removed. Lots of my fellow Ipswich fans are saying, Ben, Premier League's rubbish. I'm really looking forward to the Championship. Leicester fans and Southampton fans will be saying the same. Sheffield United and Leeds fans. Luton's an outlier, but there are reasons for that I can discuss another time. They're all saying, I'm really looking forward to the Championship. Why? And let's be honest, I feel a bit uncomfortable about it, because now the relegated teams have the parachute payments, and they're the other side of the chasm. And they are the elite when it comes to the Championship. And so we go, and so we go. Which takes us back to the initial question. Have Crystal Palace saved English football by winning the FA Cup? Does the Premier League's mid-table being so strong in comparison to how they used to be and to other nations in Europe, does that mean that English football is in good health? I think you know what I'm about to say. No, it doesn't. Crystal Palace's FA Cup win is amazing. It's absolutely brilliant. Go and get a recording and watch them pan around at, the men and women that have supported Palace for decades, who are genuinely, truly emotional. It's got massive meaning to them that they're going to get that win. Yes, that is brilliant. But no, it doesn't save English football. And English football has still got gigantic problems in terms of competition and chasms. And yes, I get that the Premier League is worried about a European Super League or a World League competing with it, and they want to be top dog. Is that the most important thing in the world? I just love English football, and I just love the pyramid and the 92. And okay, you can say, yeah, Ben, use your own advice, look further on. There's more than that. But we've got to protect this pyramid. And yes, things like Palace winning the FA Cup are brilliant, but the health of the game is still pretty problematic, isn't it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. By the way, if you're a Crystal Palace fan, this is obviously I've gone off on a tangent about English football. There are two different things here. Palace winning the FA Cup and that being absolutely brilliant is one thing, but it not saving English football is... They're distinct, but they're linked, and we're chatting about both in the video. So do not take this as an assault on Palace's brilliant day yesterday, which I did absolutely love to be across. Get your thoughts in the comments, and take a look up there at yesterday's video where we are talking about, always look one stage further, look one stage below if you're a Premier League fan, 11 pivotal moments that defined the 24-25 EFL Championship season. Enjoyed putting that together. What were their key moments? There's one a month in there. Go and take a look at that. And if you're a Crystal Palace fan, have a lovely day, and you're probably not long out of bed, go and have a glass of water probably.